Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a beautiful day here on the Kensington Roof Gardens, and welcome to one of the largest BESA Summer Insight Days that we've had. Totally full up with over 130 of you attending, and I'd like to just welcome you all, and also welcome those who actually aren't attending in person, but that will be watching this at a later date on film. Myself and Caroline, in developing our 5-year strategy for BESA, which was signed off by the Executive Council earlier on this year, have very much been talking to as many members as we can about the areas of interest and most relevance to you. I hope this day in many ways reflects that. To kick off, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to the stage one of the giants of the education sector in, I think, his... not in a literal way. In his final address as Director General, and actually following such a careful and generous handover to both Caroline and myself, I'd like to welcome Dominic Savage.
One of the giants. That reminds me, last week we were in Denver for the BESA event, and Caroline and I happened to go into one of the department stores that was there, and I think she was slightly uncertain when I went up to one of the staff and said, "Do you have a fat section in this store?" which is the only clothes that I can wear these days, but perhaps retirement will help me on the way to making some changes there, we'll see. Those of you who came to the BESA's baton passing party, thank you very much for doing so. That was on the 14th of June at Lancaster House, and it did the job that I hoped it would do, because yes, at one level it was saying goodbye to me, but at another level there were a variety of civil servants there that evening who needed very definitely to get the message that yes, at one level BESA has an interesting and successful past, but more importantly it has a very vibrant future, and I think we managed to do that on that particular evening. But also, on that evening, I told some stories, and my prime objective on that occasion was really to be somewhat entertaining and tell some stories that had a degree of humour to them and were really about the successes of BESA. Today's slightly different. It's the last occasion that I have the chance to talk to the membership, and there are things to say about expectations for the future. The vast majority of my career at BESA, the job wasn't about trying to get column inches in newspapers. There was no Twitter. And our policy, I suppose, was that we set out to work in the background. So there are, for example, a number of members in the room today who've come to me over the years with issues that for them, as individual companies or individual people, were massive. And I think they will attest to what BESA achieved for them individually or for their individual companies. To take just one area, we've helped defend members accused of bribery in international business, which I've been proud to do, particularly given that in virtually all countries, the UK and our industry acts in a really squeaky clean way. I do hope that with all the sort of social media changes that are demanded these days, that quiet work for individual members can still continue in this new environment. In my time, the only really big issue that couldn't be kept quiet was the battle with the BBC over BBC Jam. And if you're going to the High Court or to Brussels, it's difficult for it to be quiet. And having gone public over the potential decimation of our software industry by the BBC, well, we decided to go for it. This full-page advertisement in the TES only needed to appear once to have its effect. It's the only occasion that I remember where I and major members had calls from ministers effectively saying, "Call the dogs off." We touched a very raw nerve in this advertisement that nobody in government wanted to be scrutinised about, because this simple message that you see there was a truthful statement about the damage the BBC could do. But arguably, £550 million in e-learning credits that came to the industry, plus the withdrawal and then cancellation of BBC Jam, was overall not a bad deal for members. And it was Doug Brown who was the responsible civil servant at the time. E-learning credits, you might like to know, were dreamt up in my car on a journey with Doug, Ray Barker, who was then BESA director, and me, and it was on the way to Doncaster, and over 2 hours we formulated this crackpot program which somehow got accepted. It also fell to Doug to call me at 4:30 in the morning on the 14th of March 2007 with the news that, having taken the BBC case to Brussels, it had paid off. The interesting thing was that Brussels never actually ruled on our case. But they'd let the UK government know that if they did so, it would be on BESA's side. I think it was quite important that the tone that I took in responding was measured, I think appropriate, and looked to future cooperation. And it's clear that the fact that the industry didn't crow about the BBC Jam demise ensured that Minister of State Andrew Adonis came later that year to our 2007 AGM to announce the last 50 million of e-learning credits that ran through till 2008. And of course, today is different. As I said before, Twitter is to the fore, and the expectations is that everything is on Twitter before, during, and after it happens. And that means failures as well as successes. The BESA success record is great, but I want to relate to you what I see as my biggest failure at BESA. You can all go back to the late 90s when a big issue was what capability both Iraq and Iran had for the production of nuclear weapons. There are, I think, 2 people in this room who were involved in what happened in Iran. That was kept extremely tight at the time. The agent in Iran, who has brought more business to members over the decades than anyone else, made an approach about the Iranian government wishing to re-equip a number of its universities with equipment to the value of £102 million, all the specifications being for UK products. This based on long-standing relationships between our industry and education in Iran over many decades. As far as I was concerned, there were 2 considerations. This level of business fell into the well worth having category, and B, the amount of intelligence that would have been gained about what was happening in Iranian universities would have been invaluable from an international security perspective. What was the inhibitor? The EU sanctions against Iran. I managed to get the backing of ECGD, as it then was. I got the backing of DTI and some ministers, including Brian Wilson. But this actually went to a cabinet meeting. I think it's the only thing I've ever got as far as a cabinet meeting, where it was finally rejected, on the basis that we couldn't not comply with EU sanctions. And the result? Within weeks, the Germans took up the deal, financed through a French bank. They got the business, and no one got any intelligence. This is perhaps an extreme example where, if it happened today, I wonder how it would be handled, both from a government perspective and indeed from the perspective of the industry. These things are sort of never easy. But Caroline is taking over, having, with Patrick, gone to the nth degree to visit and consult with members and generally ensure that the agreed 5-year strategic plan really is taking the association forward. You've seen the beginnings of its implementation already, and you are doubtless impressed and delighted. I had the opportunity in my time to create and nurture some major developments. This is what exhibitions used to look like back in the 70s. And I was very unhappy with how the industry traditionally presented itself to our teacher purchasers. And when I started BET in 1985, I knew why it was important to do it, but I didn't comprehend at the time just how large and influential it would become, both as an event and as a revenue generator for BESA. And there are many other events in the UK and overseas that I've been involved in starting and from which BESA now benefits financially. as well as ensuring the most effective deals for BESA members. And this sort of thing is important. It's not just the obvious services that you demand day to day, but it's the looking forward to where there can be opportunities that help members and the association. So I'm quite proud that the association that I joined in 1976 with virtually nothing in the way of resources at that time, I now leave with a contingency fund of £1 million and an annual income from events in the UK and overseas of £750,000. And if you think about that, that dwarfs the amount that you all pay in subscriptions. So if you think what benefits you are getting from these other activities in terms of the services we can provide, it's very important. So perhaps my time was the time of exhibitions and events, and it may be different for Caroline, but I know that she is very much looking at every possible avenue to help members to their markets of the future. Before I leave exhibitions, it's worth noting that BESA has been contracted to EMAP, now I2I, since 1986, and there's been some great continuity with the mutual support with the I2I team, and particularly with Portfolio Director Debbie French. I want to thank Debbie and Caroline for the incredible achievement in getting Nicky Morgan actually to travel to the BET Awards this year to present me with the Outstanding Achievement Award. Thank you very much, Debbie and Caroline. I'm not quite sure how you did it, but it was a most enjoyable experience, I have to say. It was also salutary to have this photo taken at BET 2016. Ken Baker on the left opened the first BET, and Nicky Morgan, 17 Secretaries of State later, opened the 32nd BET. In exhibition terms, BET at 32 years old is a grand old lady. And the education show at 26 years old is also a great age. There's nothing wrong with age, but I do hope that the BESA team and members and the I2I team will work hard to ensure that these events continue to develop for the good of the industry and of education. What I do know is that all the succession planning has been most worthwhile. I'm seeing daily that Caroline, Patrick and the team are taking forward a veritable explosion of ideas. As I said in my resignation letter to the Executive Council, I think 40 years is long enough to put up with anyone. So that's a good reason for me to be off. But I feel truly lucky to have had a career that's been so enjoyable and with such opportunities to make a difference both in the UK and elsewhere. But it's easy to let situations make you feel more important than you are. Where's Steve Whitley? Where is he? Oh, there he is. Right. Steve will remember this occasion when we were visiting a school in Thailand, and the fuss that they made of us really sort of made you feel as if it was a sort of prime ministerial visit. But the point was that actually, when it came down to it, the teachers in that school knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew full well that we weren't important at all. But what it did was it gave them the opportunity to give their students the opportunity to make presentations, to talk in English. Come on, it's all about developing the skills that we think all children should have in this age. So, finally, thank you to the members. I'm not entirely sure I call this group representative, but still. Perhaps not all of you know that at the baton passing party, the chairman presented me with a delightful present from council. And I can actually show it to you now, because it was a bottle of 1976 Chateau Latour. 1976 being the year that I joined BESA, so now 40 years ago. And I've been asked a number of times, what am I going to do with it? I keep looking at it. But partly because my older son is doing a sommelier course at the moment, he's doing that just for fun, I might add, we've decided that we're going to find a special occasion in the not too distant future and actually see what a 40-year-old bottle of wine is like. And I'm sure we will enjoy it as I have enjoyed BESA. So, my best wishes to all the members. thank you for your friendships as much as for your membership fees. My best wishes to Caroline and the team who now take BESA forward, and here they are. From left to right, William, Tim, Felicity, Mark, Patrick, Maxine, and then the new members, Andrina, who's joining on the 18th of this month, and Rob, who's already here. But that's the team. I've been asked what I'm going to do next. The official answer is to spend more time running the Education World Forum. And the other answer is that those of you who were at the AGM last year may remember that I had a delightful shock that afternoon when I received a text photo of a scan of a 12-week-old grandchild. And Harry was finally born on the 29th of May this year and will certainly be taking up some of my time, and I'm looking forward to that greatly. Now, I'm not a Tony Blair fan, though I find that most politicians, when you actually get to know them a little bit, are actually sort of quite human. But I'm particularly am a fan of his when it comes to how he dealt with his last Prime Minister's questions when he was leaving the Commons for the last time. And it was with the line, "I wish everyone, friend or foe, well, and that is that, the end." So now, officially handing the BESA baton to Caroline and calling her for the first time Director General of BESA. Thank you all, and that is that, the end.